If your students struggle with justification in writing, the problem probably isn't their essays. It's that they're only practicing justification when they write. So today I'm going to show you how to get students practicing justification every single day without you having to add a single writing assignment. Let's dive in. All right, so I brought you over my whiteboard because I think that this is really important just for you to have a visual that justification does not equal writing, okay? Justification is not just something that we practice when we are writing. Instead, I want you to view justification, and you can even explain this to your students, that justification is thinking and talking, okay? Justification is a thinking and talking skill, right? Writing is just the way that it becomes visible and like measurable in our classrooms. So if you're telling your students like, oh, justification, explain your piece of evidence in your essay, and it's always only focused on essay writing, or it's always only focused on writing, they're not making the connection that this concept of justification is a lifelong skill that needs to be and can be applied into almost any profession that they're going to have. Even when they go in for a job interview, right? They're going to need to be able to justify why the person should hire them and not somebody else. So this is something that is going to benefit them in every area of their lives. It's not just when they're writing about literature or writing about informational texts. And so the way that this really easily shows up in our classrooms, that if students make a claim, right? Every time they make a claim, every single time they make a claim, we're going to ask them to provide evidence for their claim, always. And then we want them to explain why. And this why right here, this is like the holy grail, right? This is what we're always going to be trying to get them to, which is the justification of the thinking and talking framework. Okay, so let's say that we're having a whole class discussion and it's about characterization, and my students are, saying what they think of a certain character in the book. And I have a student say, as a whole class discussion, I think the character is selfish, right? Okay, that's great. Well, let's find evidence. Where's the evidence in the text to support that? And they might give me a weak piece of evidence. And so I'm going to try to elicit now where their thinking's going to help them see that maybe this piece of evidence isn't the best one to connect these dots. So I'm having this conversation with a student and I'm modeling for all of my other students that this piece of evidence isn't necessarily the best one, right? And then we can have other students chime in with perhaps another piece of evidence that's going to support this student's position. And so then we find this great piece of evidence, and then we can have conversations about, we can even write on the board, evidence 1 versus evidence 2. Why was this evidence not as strong as this evidence? And so I am modeling for all of my students at the same time through this one conversation with this one student about them saying that this character is selfish, of how to find solid evidence, and then also how to justify your reasoning. Well, why does this evidence show that that character is selfish? So we're constantly going deeper in our questioning with our students. One of the things that I'm going to talk about in one of my next YouTube videos is our depth of knowledge wheel, right? And asking level 2 and level 3 types of questioning with our students so that we can go further and deeper below the surface. So whole class discussion is very simple of bringing it back to just consistently questioning them and helping them see where are their gaps in their thinking, where are their gaps in their arguments, and how can I help them, find the best way to communicate what it is that they're trying to say. So now this is where I want to have students justify their thinking. I'm sorry, I'm bending down so I can get these in the picture. But basically what we're doing is we're having our teachers use posters like these to go deeper on their questioning. So we're going to ask their students, well, what's your claim? How do you explain that? Or what's the evidence that you're using? Or why does this matter, right? These posters aren't just for students to copy. It's for us as teachers so that we remember to ask better questions and constantly bring them back to claim, premise, evidence, justification over and over and over again. And we want to have these hung up around our room so that students have access to them, and you do too, as a questioning tool, right? Even if you just had something like this hanging up around your classroom that you could constantly come back to, well, explain this. Can you please provide evidence for that, etc. this becomes not just a discussion framework in your classroom, but this is really like a thinking framework for your students. And by the way, if you want a quick win with your reluctant writers, check out our detective case bundle in the description below. We're giving you 3 mystery cases that teach paragraph writing for just $9. Teachers are obsessed with these stories, and your students will actually ask to keep working on them. I promise you, it's so good. The link is right there in the description. All right, so I want to show you now why this works everywhere. If you're doing simple like cold calls with your students, you literally can just expand on it and say, well, why? Can you explain that? Can you go deeper with that for me? If your students are working on this in small groups, you can be walking around and say, well, which evidence is strongest? Like, why'd you choose that piece of evidence? Even if they're doing silent discussions, you can have students explain their thinking by going around and looking at their Post-it notes and saying, I don't really understand this, or can you come back and explain this? And you're just constantly bringing students back to the concept that they have to explain, right? They have to justify their reasoning, and they have to provide strong evidence for their position. And it's something that you're doing over and over and over again every single day. It doesn't just happen when students are writing in your classroom. It happens anytime that your kids are talking about literature or honestly informational text. So what I love about this is that when students practice justification just verbally in their everyday conversations with their students, essays and justification on essays stops feeling like this brand new skill that I barely get any time to practice with. And same thing goes for you. It's not like students are only practicing justification when they write an essay, and that's the only time that you can give them feedback. And so with this strategy, you're essentially teaching this thinking framework all year long. It happens every single day. And it's not like another routine to add or another writing style that you have to teach. It's literally just a lens through which you teach on a consistent basis. So I love it, and I hope that you implement this in your classroom, because I'm telling you, it is a game changer. So if you want more ways to make writing feel simpler and more fun for your students, definitely make sure that you hit subscribe where you're watching this video.